Welcome, my mages, to Sage of Fables. I am your fabled sage here today to talk to you all about a topic that I've had actually a number of people approach me about recently, and a lot of people have recently asked me from like the CEDH community is how do I power down a deck or how do I build a power down deck so that I can play with my friends who play mid-tier casual commander and not pub stomp them. And for one, first and foremost, for everyone who has asked me that question, I really love and appreciate that because it shows that these people have had the sort of conscious, the conscious awareness to be like, I don't want to do that to my friends, and I want to ask someone for tips on how it is that I can avoid doing that in order to, make for a better play experience for my friends. And that's wonderful. And I think we need a lot more of that sort of self-reflection within, I mean, obviously within the Magic community, but of course, as a whole for people. And so I wanted to make a video about that to talk about this experience of how it is that we can change our mindset and build our decks a little bit differently so that we can focus on the communal play experience and that happens at a casual game of Commander. And so this is, mostly for people if you have ever thought about that, if you felt that, if you want a, a different perspective on how it is to build like a mid-tier commander deck. This is what this video is intended for. And so with that, for my personal experience, I was definitely one of the people who caused our casual play group at our local game store, Two Cats, formerly here in San Francisco. It is no more, sadly. But I was one of the people who was responsible for spiking up the power level of our play group a little bit. I definitely have always been known as a spiky player. I like powerful cards. I like powerful synergies. I love playing, the best cards that I possibly can have access to. That to me is a major drive in games in general. When I was a kid, my mom taught me how to play chess, and she never played easy on me. So you can all definitely blame her for my competitive mindset because that was to me what a gaming experience was. It was trying to win, trying to defeat your opponent. And I've had to unlearn a lot of behaviors in order to be someone who is fun to play with, in order to make decks that are fun to play against. And so I think really the big awakening for me came when after I had built my first ever from scratch EDH deck, I built a Kess Storm list. Storm in quotation marks because I had not learned what Storm actually was. I just knew that it was vernacular for someone who wins the game by casting tons and tons of spells each turn, or on their turn. And I was like, well, that sounds exactly like the way I would like to win. I love casting tons of spells. So I just put everything in this Kess deck that I possibly could. I had gotten the Anala Precon, gutted some of that, threw in Sunward Invocation, and everything that gave me extra castings of spells off of spells that I cast, and it didn't have... I mean, this is one of the first decks I had ever built, too, so, it didn't have, a real specific win condition, there was a lot going on there, but I wanted to try it out. I brought it to my local game store, and I proceeded to lose every single game, because when I told the people I was playing with, this is a Kess Storm deck I built, they're all like, well, great, we're gonna kill you first. And I was like, but why? And I learned that if there's a Storm player at the table, that you always kill them first because they're going to take a 40-minute turn and probably do nothing, and it's going to waste everyone's time. Well, funny. Well, actually, so the first time I did win with this deck, I ended up, it was already probably a 5 or 6 person game. The game had already slogged on for a long time, and I finally got to a point where after a 40-minute turn, I was able to storm off and kill everyone through combats and lots of spells and just cycling through my resources over and over again, and I was I was shaking by the time my turn was done, and I had like finally done it. And I was just so ecstatic and so thrilled. I had finally gotten to do the thing. And I looked around the table at each of my friends, and they were all checked out, looking to go outside and have a cigarette, get another drink, looking at their phone. And I felt awful. I felt really fucking awful. I internalized that really deeply, probably way deeper than I should have. And I went home and I tore that deck apart. And I said, I'm never going to build a storm deck ever again in Commander. Because I never wanted to do that to my friends again. I never wanted that disparate level of fun to happen again. And so we started on an emotional and self-reflective journey, basically. And of course, clearly I got somewhere because, as everyone knows, Storm is kind of my thing. So there are a lot of things that I learned from that point on. One of them first being that, we need to learn how to set expectations about what kind of game it is. And so, I love that lately everything has been really focused around the Rule Zero conversations at the start of every game. I love seeing that on streams. I love sitting down with my friends and having those conversations, when we have like our weekly Magic night. And so, not to harp on it for too long, but, sort of the framework that I use is, one, when I'm sitting down playing with strangers, I ask them how they would like to be referred to, so their name and their pronouns. Very simple. Just do it. If you think that you're not going to remember someone's name and pronouns, if you have an Infinitoken nearby, just write them down. Like, write out the phonetic spelling if you have to, and, write down their pronouns, so I can be like, Sage, them, and I'll remember. It's a very, very simple, easy thing to do. And if I saw someone sit across through the table and do that, I'd be like, wow, look how caring and considerate they are, that they are putting in that effort in order to be conscious of the fact that I use they them pronouns. Like, that's really fucking cool. Another thing, of course, is when you're sitting down and talking about your decks, what I like to do is ask people, is there anyone who has a deck that they absolutely want to play? And I think this opens up the conversation in a really great way, because it opens up for, someone, if, because you just build a new deck and you really want to get in a good round with it to really see if the vision that you built it with is actually going to play out in real life. And so making sure that that person has that sort of as ideal as a setting it can be to test a new deck is really important. But, it also happens like when you tune up a deck or you haven't played a deck in a long time and you get that craving. I really want to give the space for those people who, if they really feel strongly about a deck that they want to play, let's try and match that. That's not really too big of an ask, I think. And so, especially when you're playing with a group where you get to play multiple games per night, you can pass that question around. You can say like, all right, you got your game this evening. Now we can make sure that you have, if there's anyone else that has a deck that they really want to play, let's try and make a pot around that. And you can, pass it around from week to week, making sure everyone's gets their cycle in of decks that they want to play. And that's really helpful too, because when everyone can have such a different idea of what fun means during a game of Commander, it gets everyone the opportunity to, to get to do the thing that they love doing the most in a game of Magic. Because I know for me, the thing that I love doing the most, obviously, is storming off. And so, I want to be able to play my Brutaclad Storm deck and, have the table be okay. Sometimes, it'll get to the end and I'm going to take a long turn, but I'm probably going to kill you. I'm 99% sure I'm going to kill you at the end of it. And if, you're good to sit through a 10-minute turn, cool. Awesome. Thank you. I have like our friend Chad, who he just absolutely loves paying life for cards. And so he has this insane Phyllis deck that's definitely going to beat the ever loving shit out of you. Um, and draw his whole deck while he's doing it. We have, my partner Paul loves to play with modular creatures and have 1/1 counters and, turning all of these little dials. And so he has like his Zabaz deck or his Marchesa deck that does that. And so to be able to be like, for everyone to be cool with, oops, here's an infinite combo, or like, oh, you might get infected out with all of these, moving of 1/1 counters around. Giving that's all very different meanings of fun. And, like as a group, we want to try and honor all of that and make sure that everyone has the opportunity to get to do the thing that they love in like the setting that's right for it. And that doesn't mean, where everyone's come prepared, to deal with that. And so I think that, it's a really great way to help like bring your group together. And so, and then once, one person has said like, oh, this is a deck I really want to play, then ask questions about that deck. Is it fast? Is it slow? Does it run fast mana? Is it looking to combo out for a finish? Ask about like the general archetypes of the deck in order to, try and match that speed that you're going for, that rhythm and that cadence. And you're not guaranteed to have a good game, but you're already coming into it with a better mentality of we're looking for the communal play experience. And I think that's really one of the biggest takeaways that I've had over this sort of journey of self-reflection and playing in different playgroups and playing at really all different levels of competitiveness within EDH is that it's not about shifting the power of your decks that you're playing. It's about shifting your mindset from a competitive play experience to a communal play experience. And that doesn't mean in a communal play experience that you're not looking to win, because of course a game does have to end, but it's about the quality of the journey to getting to that ending. We want to make sure that everyone hopefully had the opportunity for their deck to do the thing that it wanted to do. And that was interactive, and that, everyone felt involved. And that's what makes a game of casual EDH feel so good. And so these Rule Zero conversations that we can have, when people list their questions that they ask, can always sound a little bit formal, and that can make it seem maybe a little bit awkward to approach that conversation, because it does have that sense of formality. But when you think about it, when you're meeting with your regular play group, a lot of conversations sound like, "Hey, I started building this Omnath Locus of Creation Flicker deck that plays all of the best permanents that flicker spells. It's maybe can go infinite, but I'm not really sure. But, it's 4-color good stuff." And then your friend says, "Wow, well, I've been tinkering with this deck, and I think it might be a half step quicker, and I'm really looking to try it out." And then, everyone goes around the corner, and, you all within casual conversation talk about what you've been doing with your decks. Someone says, "Oh, I haven't played this, this Gashoth deck in forever, and it finally got some new dinosaurs." And so if you just think about the casual conversations you have with friends when you're sitting down to play a game with them, just think about how you would mark those as a bullet point to have that conversation with strangers, as sort of like a guiding line to making sure that, you all get to that, that good play experience. It's just like, wow, imagine when you just talk to each other like you're fucking people. It's great. It's crazy. But with that, so, once you've had your Rule Zero conversation, you've decided on the decks that you're going to build, you have your play experience, and then afterwards it's also equally important to have a post-game chat that, doesn't have to be super formal either, but you can be like, all right, how did everyone feel about that? You could say to one of the people, "I noticed your deck did X. What did you feel about that? I noticed you got shut down by that one spell. Like, is there a way that we could have, teamed up together to deal with that. You just reflect on the game experience together, and that continues to open up that dialogue and make things, flow more naturally, and so that you can hear the feedback for how everyone else viewed that game. Because if you all have such different levels or such different ideas about what was fun, then you get more information about the other people's perspectives, and that's it's really illuminating. Especially when can be so cagey with our hands and thinking about our game actions, and not taking the time maybe to like read people's body language. It's really good to have that talk to make sure that what you saw about them reacting, is in accordance with what they were feeling. And that way you get to learn about the people that you're playing with too. And so with that, of how we as brewers can now shift our perspectives from building for a competitive mindset to building for a communal mindset. Really, the number one for me is to stop telling yourself to power down your deck. Because as competitive people, one of our major drives is playing the most powerful cards, is making the most powerful plays, making these big, huge, splashy plays, storming off, accumulating this insanely grindy engine. It's, countering every single spell, and then, just deploying your combo to win the game. We all have we all have those moments where you feel like a powerful Magic player. And, me without fail, it's every time I get to land that Dryad Arbor line and I get to flicker Dryad Arbor infinitely and reset Omnath Locus of Creation and burn out the table, I'm just like internally cackling like a bad man. I'm just like, Sage, you're such a fucking genius. You made this deck and it's awesome and it's doing the thing. And, that's what makes me feel powerful. We all have these moments where we feel like that, and so when we say to ourselves, I need to build a power down deck, or I need to take this deck and turn the power down, because power is so connected with what our idea of good is, when you say I need to build a power down deck, you're putting yourself opposite of the goal of that deck, based, off of the language that we're using, because the lower the power, the worse it is. And that means less fun because it's not going to do the things that we want to do, which is to make, powerful plays and play with powerful cards. So you're already putting yourself in this negative mindset when you say, I need to make a powered down deck, because you start thinking about, oh, I don't get to play, all of these cards, because they're mean, or because, they're too spiky. And so you just sort of get yourself in this negative spiral. And that brings me to my next point, is that stop thinking about the cards that you don't get to play. Think about the cards that you do get to play. Especially in CDH, or, in all competitive Magic, there are the definitely like optimized lines and the optimal decks. And if you're not playing those, then what the fuck are you doing here? So is a lot of the mentality that we have. And so, like in CDH, for example, there isn't really a viable, aristocrats deck, like, at me or whatever. But that archetype as a whole isn't really like representative as one of the major playable things in CDH, for example. And so when you get to casual, now you get to play that. You get to play, all these different archetypes that exist within these 24,000 cards that comprise Magic. You get to play such a bigger pool of cards, and there are so many great ones. Like that's what makes Commander so fantastic, is because for the most part you get to play with whatever card you want from the history of Magic. And so, don't think about that you don't get to play all of your powerful cards. Your powerful cards have a place. They have a place in your, in your favorite CDH deck. But, if you take a CDH deck of 100 cards and you think about it, like, 30 of them are lands thereabouts, and then you're going to have 50, format staples, and then you're going to have like 20 cards that are unique to that deck that make it make it what it is. So if you imagine just taking those 20 unique cards, taking out all the format staples, and then everything except for the basic lands, which, I mean, honestly, how many CDH decks are running basic lands now? You've now moved those aside. You don't get to touch those. Like, move them out of your purview. Now you have 80 slots to play with. Like, that's such a big, wide open field. Like, that is, and that's amazing. And so, moving all of those like sort of format staples to the side, you get to explore this big, huge brewing space, like none other. And so when we're exploring this big, huge brewing space, some of the guidelines that I personally use when I'm building a deck is, for one, no tutors unless they're for lands. Instead of tutoring, in CDH we're used to tutoring for our win cons. We run as many tutors as we can possibly fit within our color pairing, and because they are card efficient. But in casual, for one, you're probably not going to be playing A plus B combos. That's definitely another guideline. Instead of having tutors, look for interesting ways to draw cards. Having to draw into your win con is one definite way that it's going to slow your deck down. It is going to bring it into a much more communal ready space, because, if you have to establish, a board state, deploy your permanents that are going to give you value, if you have to get the mana so that even you can cast your instants and sorceries that are going to draw you cards, that's going to take you down a couple steps, and that will give the time for people, also to establish their boards. And so there are a lot of, for any strategy that you can think of, like, there are cards that draw cards because of, like, that have to do with that synergy. Aristocrats, whenever a creature dies, draw a card. There are ways to draw cards for every strategy. I'm sure you can find it. And if not, then you can just play cards, play instants and sorceries that tell you to draw cards. My second guideline that I use is budget. So if your playgroup uses deck lists for their casual deck lists, or for their casual decks, not every playgroup does, but if they do, look at their decks. Look at where their price, spread is. Build a deck around that price level. I personally build decks in the 200 to 400 area. And I usually don't include any cards that are worth above $50. And within that, $300 average value, you're gonna have a powerful deck. It's not about focusing that money into high dollar pieces. But make where every card is like $5 is a really good deck. So go for budget, make some restrictions, make restrictions for yourself if you have to. You can do no cards over $5. It's not hard. Just look at what look around and see what your meta's doing. Another thing, as I had alluded to earlier, was no A plus B combos. I think my general rule that I stick to is that try to go for, if it's going to be an infinite combo, it should require 4+ pieces to assemble on the board. That specifically is because if you have to put these 4 permanents on the board, that means that it allows for a lot of different interaction, generally for different types of interaction, to be able to take it down. While, of course, in competitive, we always want to, we're playing a game of Magic. We try and want to protect our wins as much as we possibly can. But making sure that your pieces, that if you are including combos, that there are spells that can easily remove those pieces, is one way to make sure that your deck is more communally focused, because we want part of what makes games fun are having really strong interactive games. And if no one can interact with what you're doing, then you're immediately taking away from that communal experience. Yeah. And then my sort of last one that I have, that is one that I really sort of lean on the most, is make trade-offs. So with my decks, if I really, really want to play powerful cards, like I'll take my Crick deck, for example. My Crick deck has an extended foil, Peer into the Abyss. It has a Demonic Tutor. It has a Vampiric Tutor. It used to have Ad Nauseam. And you would say, but Sage, you broke all of your rules. Well, yes, I did. There are, lots of good tutors in there. The budget, I think it's probably around $500 to $600 now, especially because it has all the Modern Horizons 1 snow basics. Sage, you hypocrite, how dare you? Well, the trade-off that I make for Crick, for having this nice mono black mana base, for having these really nice tutors and powerful card draw, is that I have 30 Relentless Rats in that deck. I play really powerful cards, but it's offset by the strategy in that it is rat tribal. And of course that deck, that's not to say that this Crick deck isn't powerful. It is. It is hugely explosive. It can deploy a Gary and win on the spot. I can use Extort. But the way that it is doing it is through rat tribal. It is, you board wipe me and I'm pretty much done. You get rid of my Jet Medallion, just destroyed. It's easy to interact with. You, oh my god, you exile my graveyard? Yeah, forget it. At the right time, completely shut me off. It's very easy to interact with, and it's most of the time playing big, dumb, vanilla, like, 9/9s. Make trade-offs. Make hard restrictions for yourselves. If you really want to throw in some of those format staples, if you want to have that Rhystic Study, if you want to have Forbidden Tutors, like that's, if you want to focus, your budget into a couple of big high dollar cards, that's fine. But make a restriction for yourself. What cost to the deck are you making as a result of that? Let's see, like, what's another one? Like, in my Gashoth deck, I have Enlightened Tutor, I have, the one that puts 3 creatures on top, I have a Worldly Tutor, but I'm playing, all that I'm doing, I'm focusing all of that strategy is into making sure I can cast Gashoth and get dinosaurs into play. That might win me the game, but a board wipe is like, puts me out. You remove Gashoth, you take control of Gashoth, I am out of the game, and that's fun. I'm okay with that. Just make trade-offs for yourselves. And that's the thing, is if you really want to push the power in one perspective, find a way to pull it back, restrict, put in those sub-themes, I have a Corval deck. In order to justify running Corval as a commander, I said only pauper legal cards. It still does a lot because Corval is so ridiculously good. Find a very niche way to to optimize something, and then take all of the power out in another way, and that will make it so that it adds in a really healthy level of RNG. And yeah, it's just that's definitely one of the main tenets of deck building that I definitely lean on. And so when you're making your decks, I find that it helps me to first pick a theme. So and that can be around color pairing or archetype, say, aristocrats. Like recently, I made a Hoffrey deck. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do Boros aristocrats, and then like thinking about the, I mean, it's Boros. It's already, it's not so underpowered, but it does some interesting things. Um, yeah, pick a sub theme, find a way to restrict yourself, and with that, spending the time on Scryfall, you will find really interesting cards that will be unique and different, and will are a way to invite collaboration into the game, because when you play cards that not everyone knows, then you have to make people lean forward and be like, wait, what is that? And that pulls people into the game. And that's what we want in a communal game of Magic. We want people pulled in. We want people brought in, and yeah. So I think with that, I guess that brings me to sort of like closing thoughts, and that making a communal experience driven deck doesn't just mean swapping powerful cards out of your deck. It doesn't mean just taking out all of the tutors. It means that you need to shift your perspective during gameplay too. And this, of course, doesn't mean play poorly, doesn't mean misplay. If anything, you should celebrate making optimal play sequences, because I think people don't give casual Commander players enough credit, because in casual, there's a lot more going on, and it's a lot harder to keep track of because everything's committed to the board, and you have to find a way to figure out how to sort your mind down to figure out what is important. And because communally focused driven decks often don't have like those hard lines to victory, they're a lot more nebulous. That means actually that play sequencing is a lot more important in order to get the most value out of your plays, especially when you're looking to commit to the board. And you are going to face board wipes where you aren't really in competitive Commander. And so, being a casual player doesn't mean play badly. Play like a Spike. But with that, if you are still feeling like you are having a hard time shifting your focus from, playing in a really competitive play space to being more community focused in your game, for each round that goes around the table, make a point to point out a neat card or a cool interaction or something that you notice that, something cool that you notice one of the other players did. And that's going to help pull you out of your head and out of your cards and what you're sequencing and what you're trying to do, and pull you into the spirit of, celebrating your opponent's triumphs. We're here to look at what are, especially with, in all of our decks, casual or competitive, a lot of them are really a deep reflection of, who we are as brewers. And so if you make a point to say, just once per round, like, oh, wow, I never thought about how those two cards interacted before, or, oh, I think that's, how you sequence that play there, that made it so that you really got, like, a lot of value out of that. If that brings you into celebrating your opponents and noticing the time that they have put into their decks, and getting that praise and that call out feels good, and it helps lift the spirit of the table. And people will eventually tell you the cool things that they notice about your decks too. And yeah, so, and I think another sort of helpful thing too is that find other ways to set achievements for your decks that don't involve just winning. So, like for me, I set like little achievements to unlock for each of my decks. And so for my Omnath Locus of the Royal deck, I'm always looking to try and beat my record with Omnath's ETB. So when Omnath Locus of the Royal ETBs, he does damage equal to the number of elementals that you have in play. And so my record so far is 40, and I'm always trying to beat that record. And that could lead to me, winning a game, because, if I beat 40, I could take someone out. But it doesn't necessarily have to win me the game. I could point that 40 damage at a giant creature and kill it. But if I beat 40, then I will just be satisfied that my deck got to do that thing. With Gishath, I'm like my goal is to try and get out 10 plus dinosaurs on a single Gashoth trigger when she does combat damage. I've never done it. I've gotten close. And so when you focus on, a goal that you want your deck to do that's other than just straight up winning the game, and you build in these little mini games for yourself, that can be a really fun way for you to feel like you're competing, but you're just competing with yourself and with your deck. Keeping a small mental track of those like little records and things are a fun way to make it competitive for yourself, but while still focusing on the communal play experience of yourself and your opponents. And lastly, like, this isn't gonna change overnight for you. If you've really been like stuck in this, in one mindset for such a long time, it is hard to unlearn or how to change or shift that perspective. I know, like, think of how long it took you to learn like the ins and outs of competitive Magic, of to learn like all these format stables, of to learn your deck, to learn when to interact. That to build up that knowledge took a lot of time. It's going to take just, maybe not just as much time, but it is going to take a lot of time to be able to learn how to set those aside and focus on different things. And so, just be honest with yourself and have your own self-reflection about these experiences, and figure out what it is that like really does bring you joy in Magic, and use that as a guiding light to be able to bring that into a community experience. Because when we sit down and play a game of Casual Commander, everyone wants to see everyone else's deck do the thing. That's like really one of the overwhelming like majority of of opinions. Is like a good game is when everyone, when someone eventually wins, but everyone's deck got to do the thing. And so, do a lot of reflection on what brings you the greatest joy in Commander and why. And then find a way to do it on turn 10, because you'll always be a step quicker than you think. But yeah, I think that pretty much does it. Those are all my thoughts. If you really don't, if after all of this you really don't trust yourself to build a mid-tier casual deck, throw me $5 on Ko-fi, hit up my Patreon. I will build a deck for you. I love building mid-tier decks. Like, it's just what goes through my head all of the time. So hit me up. I can build something for you, or help you narrow down cards, or give you some insight on how you can maybe what might be some interesting includes to help make your deck more communally focused, or what are some trade-offs that you can make to help so that you can play some more powerful cards, but to make sure that that it's looking to win at a nice, even at a later tempo. Yeah, hit me up on Twitter. You can find me on all of the social medias at Seth of Sage, which is also my Mox Field, where you can follow me and see all of the decks that I have brewed, both casual and competitive. I am looking to do another deck tech coming up soon. I'm trying to remember which one it was. Let's see, I did Hoffray. We'll probably do... I think I've talked about it so much. I think I'll probably do my Omnath Locus of Creation. Not Locus of Creation. Locus of the Royal Land Creature Tribal. A very, very fun deck. And yeah, I hope this has been informative. I hope it has given you something to think about. And I would love to hear your thoughts. So, post some comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. And yeah, this has been fun to talk about. And I will see you next time, folks.